section 1.4. In this section, we're going to be multiplying integers. I'm going to be blunt. By this point in time in your life, you should be able to fill out this chart fairly quickly. This is a multiplication chart. You've probably seen this for quite some time now. And I will also tell you this. If you do not know your multiplication tables by this time, that's okay. However, you need to start learning them. You need to start to memorize them, quite frankly. This entire chart should be in your head just like that, all right? Now, it's okay if you don't have it right now. However, over the course of this year, we're going to make that happen. So what I want you to do right now is, if you have a way of timing yourself, you can get a stopwatch, or if you're at home, you can use a cell phone, any way to time yourself. I want you to pause the video and time yourself to see how long it takes you to fill this out. Now, I'm going to do the exact same thing, and I'm going to do it on screen, and I'm going to do a kind of a fast forward so you can see me do it. But off camera here, I have a stopwatch that I've got through Google, and I'm going to hit start, and I am going to fill this chart out as fast as I possibly can, and I'm going to start right now. So, for me, it took 4 minutes and about 17 seconds. I think that's about right. I hit the camera right when I was hitting the timer. Excuse me. So it was about 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Look, here's the deal though. I just challenged myself. I don't remember the last time I even filled out a multiplication chart like this. It's probably since I was your age I ever did this. We used to have to do 5-minute drills, so I'm actually impressed with myself that I was able to do this in 5-minute time. I had to stop and think. So some of you can probably do it faster than me, and if you do, awesome. That's great. Some of you might take you a little bit longer. It might take you double. And you know what? I expect that. So if it takes you about, say, 8 minutes to do this, you know what? I'm pretty pleased. That's not too bad, especially at your age and not doing it all that much. However, what I want you to try to shoot for, and I want you to do this as often as you can possibly think for, is I want you to try to shoot for a 5-minute mark, okay? That's your goal. So try to do this every so often. I'm not going to force you to do it. I'm not going to make you do it. I'm not going to be assigning this, but I do suggest that this should be a goal for you, is a 5-minute mark. And I might pop this up on you every now and then just to do it in class, but just be aware, you should be able to do it. And like I said, last time I did it, when I was your age. So it just takes time. It really does. Now, why did we go through this? Because multiplication of integers basically is going to follow the same exact things and rules as regular multiplication, except for a couple of different things, which I'm going to talk to you about now. So, the rules for multiplying integers. You always multiply left to right, and the reason why I'm saying that, it follows PEMDAS. You should remember that in your order of operations, okay? And we'll review that a little bit later just in case you can't remember, but you're always going from left to right. 2, if you multiply the same signs, this creates a positive number. And 3, multiplying different signs creates a negative number. All right, so let's just kind of keep those rules in our mind, and let's just go over into the next page of your assignment here, or your video, and let's just look at it. So 8 times 9. Well, Since you don't have a calculator and you shouldn't be using it, you should know that this is 72. All right, so 8 times 9 is just 72. And is it a positive or a negative? Well, if you look at our rules, it says multiplying same signs creates a positive number. So it's a positive 72. And just to kind of prove it, I'm going to use our little chart here, and we're going to say 8 times 9. We go 8, travel it down, and 9, travel it down, and we get 72. So our chart matches with what we already know. Now look at this next one. It says 7 times negative 7. So stop right there. We know that this is a positive 7. We know that this is a negative 7. And let me zoom in a little bit. Sorry about that. A little bit better. We know that this is a 7 and this is a negative 7. And since they're different signs, we know our final answer is going to be a negative because that is what our rule says. So what is 7 times 7? Well, we can use our chart, or if we've got it memorized, we know it's 49. So 7 times a negative 7 is negative 49. Okay, so as long as you know what 7 times 7 is, you've got your number. If you follow your rules where they're opposites or they're different signs, it makes a negative. All right, so let's look at this one. Is this going to be a positive number when our final answer is going to be positive, or is it going to be negative? Well, if you notice that the signs are different for both, it's going to be negative. Well, what's 10 times 40? Well, 10 times 40, we can use our chart again, or if we know it, we simply know it to be 40. So negative 10 times 4 is negative 40. So let's look at 4. Right off the bat, we know that 5 times 6, if we don't even worry with the signs right now, happens to be 30. 5 times 6 is 30. But is it positive or negative? Well, let's follow our rules. I have a negative times a negative. So those two signs are the same. And because of our rule that we created, that means that this is going to be a positive 30. So these rules always go. So multiply left to right. If they're the same sign, create a positive number. And if they're different signs, it creates a negative number. So let's look at it, what happens when we have more than one number. So I told you we always go from left to right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go left to right, and I'm going to multiply these two numbers first. I'm not worried about this guy yet, just these two numbers. So 12 times negative 1. I know that 12 times 1 is 12. That I know. But is this going to be a positive 12 or a negative 12? Well, what's our rule state? A positive and a negative. Two different signs, therefore, this is going to be a negative. Now we can bring this next piece down because we can multiply by the negative 2 now. So I have negative 12 times a negative 2. Well, I know that 12 times 2 is 24, but is this going to be a positive 24 or a negative 24? Well, since both of these have the same sign, they were both negatives, that means this 24 will be positive according to our rules. So why don't you pause the video now and try number 6 and 7 and 8 on your own. What you should have got was negative 210 for 6, and 7 is 0, and then 8 is negative 96. Number 7 should have been easy because if you can recall back of something probably you learned last year, if you take a number and you multiply it by 0, you will always get 0. So negative 20 times 0 is 0. And 0 times negative 4 is 0. So this one should have been an easy one. All right, so now before we start talking about these, let's talk about some rules when we call about what we call exponents. So this next one says negative 2 raised to the power of 2. And it looks very similar to the first one we have, except there is about the parentheses. And your instinct is to probably write negative 2 times negative 2. And here's the thing. This is absolutely, positively incorrect. Do not do that. I'm going to scratch it out over and over and over again. So if you wrote negative 2 times negative 2, it's wrong. I don't normally do this. It's wrong. It's wrong. Get it out of your head. Scratch. No. All right. Here's the reason why. Look at this one again. The whole thing is in parentheses, and so we were able to make -2 times -2 over here because this square, this exponent, this power of 2 was affecting everything in the parentheses. However, when we do this way, the only thing that this exponent is even remotely wanting to do anything with is just the 2. And only the 2, nothing else. This has nothing to do with this negative, whereas over here it dealt with everything because of the parentheses. So what am I telling you to do? So if I do -2 square, it means that the negative is just by itself. And then I'm actually going to multiply the 2 by itself 2 times. 1, 2. So we're not going to lose this negative. It's going to stay right there. But what's 2 times 2? Well, it happens to be 4. But that negative never goes away. So the answer to this, -2 square, is actually -4. Whereas over here, -2, all in parentheses square, is equal to a +4. It's a pretty big difference. Now, you might think, well, it's just a sign, Mr. Lewis. I'm telling you now, if you don't watch this, this will mess you up bad. I'm telling you, I have seen people in calculus making the same mistake, and it messes up equations. Please understand that this exponent is only going to talk to this number. And this exponent talks to everything inside the parentheses. That's the difference. So let's just do one more just to show you. -3, all in parentheses, square, is equal to -3 times -3. Well, what's that? Well, 3 times 3 we know to be 9, and we know a negative times a negative is a positive. So the answer for this one is 9. Whereas for this one, when we do it, oops, the camera's a little crooked here. Sorry about that. Fix the camera. Technical difficulties. So when I do this one, -3 square, the only thing that is being squared, the only thing that the exponent is worried with is just this 3. So the negative doesn't go away, but this is really saying negative times 3 times 3. So, whoops, I'll make that a little bit bigger. So -3 times 3. Well, that negative doesn't go away, and 3 times 3 is 9. So that's my answer for this one. So be aware of that. This only affects the number, whereas in this one, it affects everything inside the parentheses. Those parentheses are a big deal. And yes, I have spent a lot of time on this because it is a huge deal. And I'm going to say it again. The exponent affects everything when there's a parentheses, but if there's not a parentheses, it only affects the number and not the sign. All right, so now, with that being said, let's look at some of these problems that we have. On number 9, it says -8, all in parentheses, square. Well, that's just what we talked about. That's really saying -8 times -8, all of that parentheses. I'm going to let you figure that out. Look at these other ones, and I want you to try these on your own. Be aware of 11 and 12. These are a little bit tougher, but we'll talk about them. All right, so for number 9, after you multiply the -8 times -8, you should have got a +64. And -11 squared, remember that square only affects the 11, and 11 times 11 is 121, so our final answer was a -121. Now, we do this part first. Remember, we always go left to right, but don't forget your PEMDAS rules. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So we would go P for parentheses. There's nothing more we could do inside. And then we do E for exponents. So what we have to do first is -5 square. What you should have got was a +25. All right, don't forget, PEMDAS is not going away. It's your best frenemy. All right. So now that we have 9 times 25, we get 225. This one, follow PEMDAS again. parentheses, nothing we can do inside of them. Then we do our exponents. Negative 2 to the third power. Well, here's the thing. Notice that all of this is in parentheses. So you should have done negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 and multiply that out. Negative 2 times negative 2 would have given you a positive 4 times another negative 2 would have given you negative 8. So negative 8 times a negative 6 equals 48. Now this one was difficult probably because you actually had a power of 3. So if this stumps you, you know how to find me and you know how to ask others for help. All right, so you should have gotten 48 on that. All right, so let's look at 13. You lose 5 points for every wrong answer in a trivia game. What integer represents the change in your points after answering 8 questions wrong? Well, look, it says that you'll lose 5 points. So is that going to be a positive number or a negative number? Well, if you're losing something, it's going to be a negative number. So it's going to be negative 5 points. And it's for every 8 questions wrong. So this is multiplication. So if you answered 8 questions wrong, it's asking you how many points did you lose altogether. So it's simply multiplication. Negative 5 times 8. Well, we know that 5 times 8 is 40. All right. And we also know that since this is a negative and this is a positive, we follow our rules. If the signs are different, our multiplication answer will be negative. So we had a negative 40 points. All right. A glacier is melting at a rate of 36 cubic miles each year. What integer represents the change in the glacier's volume over 4 years? So this is losing. It says it's melting. So again, I just gave you the key word. It's losing size. It's losing 36 cubic miles each year. So based upon that, because it's losing, it's a negative number. But it says over 4 years. So if we're doing that every 4 years, how much did we lose? Well, now we can just do some numbers. Let's do it with some scrap work on the side. 36 times 4. Well, 6 times 4 is 24. 3 times 4 is 12. Plus the 2 gives me 14. So I have 144. But is it positive or a negative? Well, let's look at our question here. I have a negative and I have a positive. And since the signs are different, my answer must be a negative. So I am minus 144 cubic miles. So number 15, I'll read it and then I'm going to kind of leave it to you as your challenge for this particular assignment. It says, the value of a computer is given by the expression $2,000 plus negative 200t, where t is the time in years. Complete this table. So your job is to figure out what happens after each year. What is the value of the computer per year after you've bought it? So I'm going to leave that one as your challenge problem. Again, as always, you know how to find me. We've covered over some basics and we're going to keep going. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.